watching your turn. If it matters to you, it's important to us.
Okay, here's this DVD. It's been showing up in newspapers around the country, including our own Tampa Tribune and St. Petersburg Times, right there in the Sunday inserts, along with ads and coupons for food and detergent. This is very unusual, though, a film called Obsession, Radical Islam's War Against the West. Some call it propaganda and say it's anti-Muslim. Some say it's something every American should see. Take a look.
وشعارنا الذي رفعناه ولا نخشى أن نكرره في كل عام الموت لأمريكا.
Two questions under discussion today. If you have seen this, it came in your paper, you took a look at it, what do you think about it? And secondly, what about its placement in your local newspaper? Is that the place for what some are calling a controversial propaganda movie, or is a newspaper the perfect place for the expression of free speech, even if unpopular? Very interesting topic today. We are welcoming your comments. Your turn at WTVT.com. We're going to read what you have to say. Tom McGowan joining us, St. Petersburg attorney who specializes in First Amendment cases. Ahmed Bedier is a radio show host, True Talk on WMNF, and president of the Tampa Hillsborough Human Rights Council. And Frank Wuko joins us, a retired naval intelligence officer, currently president and CEO of Red Mine Solutions and a consultant to CENTCOM. Well, gentlemen, you know, Frank Wuko, we're going to start with you because you've studied the mind of a jihadist, do a whole role play on it. Did this accurately depict an Islamic jihadist, in your opinion?
In that it depicted people who have committed themselves to jihad, whether or not it can be argued that they've properly understood or have properly represented what they believe this obligation to be. Both kind of, to them, it would be both personal and communal. In that it did rely a lot on Middle Eastern media. It was an accurate depiction of what these people believed, the folks who were shown. I don't think it.
I'm hearing a but in your conversation there.
No,
but
what I don't. The but there is that I'm not sure that I didn't get from Obsession that the producers were trying to make something that did anything other than that, than to try to portray this element of Islam, this obligation to jihad that these people have undertaken. I didn't see it as an Islam 101 film, and I don't think they tried to portray it as such. I think it was definitely thematic. I think it was, you know, like a lot of...
Designed to what?
It, you know, like it was designed to call attention to something. If the key word there is to provoke thought, in other words, it obviously is a provocative documentary, then... You know, this cuts right to this freedom of speech issue that we're talking about. And you know,
let me get Ahmed in here. You know, does it accurately portray? Let's get off. Let's not talk about free speech for the first question. The first question is, does it, in your opinion, adequately portray what Islamic Jihad is?
Definitely not. It doesn't even really go into studying what it is and why. You know, how do you become a terrorist, or what is jihad in principle? I think what it does and it tries to do is scares people. It's fear mongering. It tries to portray Islam and the strand in Islam is more dangerous than Nazism and fascism, and it's the biggest threat to the world. Unless we act right now, before this election, all hell's going to break loose. And I think it's trying to, the producers and the people, the Clarion Fund that's behind this distribution of 28 million copies, are trying to scare American voters in critical swing states ahead of this election. I think that's their intent. They're not trying to provide solutions. They're just trying to spread propaganda, and it doesn't do enough to distinguish between the majority of Muslims around the world and this hateful political militants and extremists that should be treated like criminals and isolated, and it in fact elevates them like somehow they're more dangerous than Hitler's Nazis, which I think that's a disservice to, and it plays on people's fears and ignorance of Islam at this
Okay, Tom
sensitive
McGowan,
time.
it shows up in the newspaper right there with the detergent ads. Newspaper, is that the perfect place for free speech, or is it over the line?
Well, the threshold question is whether or not this falls under free speech. The Clarion organization is nonprofit, and they're not supposed to engage in political speech. That's a law. This is clearly timed for the election. It's clearly generated to stereotype Muslims. They have a little disclaimer at the beginning But the film, you watch the whole thing, it reminded me of those of us old enough to remember the communism classes in the Cold War, the kind of the bloody red blood coming across the map as communism was creeping across the world. And they did the same thing with a map showing where all these terrorist events have happened. And it's clearly done to create fear. I mean, no question about it. It doesn't say, here's a solution. They imply the solution is that we need to keep fighting.
The disclaimer you're referring to is at the beginning of this DVD, and we've all watched it on this panel, is that this is not about the majority of peaceful, moderate Muslims. This is not about them. This is about the extreme jihadists, the ones who are violent, the ones who are terrorists. It doesn't take a political stand. It doesn't tell you who to vote for. Why is that political speech?
In my opinion, because of the timing, because of if you watch the film, it is a call to action. They have a quote from Edmund Burke that say, if good men don't do anything in the face of evil, evil will triumph.
Included in the DVD on the back, though, it has some action items to do. One of them is to visit their website, radical-islam.org, and there's a commercial that tells them on election day, vote this way. Vote for somebody who stands up against radical Islam. Obviously, again, when you start mailing things, it didn't just go in the newspaper, it went through using the voter database in people's mailboxes that did not subscribe to this, and just because they're a registered voter, they get this in the mail. Obviously, when you start using the voter database, that's a political electioneering. And yes, free speech is protected in this country, and more power to them. They can publish whatever they want to publish. But once you start using it, political speech for political motivations, you have to register as a political organization in this country. And later on, when we talk about who's behind this and the funding, it'll be clear what their motivation is.
All right, we'll take a break. We'll be right back and continue this conversation about Obsession, the DVD. I'll be right back. All right, we did make an effort to call some of the newspapers. St. Pete Times sent this statement to us. The Obsession DVD advertisement was part of a nationwide advertising purchase. Newspapers, including ours, frequently publish political advertising, and those ads are clearly marked as such. This ad fell within our standards of acceptable advertising. Based on freedom of speech grounds, we were disinclined to refuse it. As I understand, and Tom McCown, 36 newspapers around the country, 70. Okay, the New York Times carried it. Wall Street Journal carried it. Tampa Tribune, St. Pete Times, only one that I'm aware of did not. It was in North Carolina. And so, it is, they are free to carry this if they were paid advertising, and newspaper climate being what it is, they probably didn't want to turn down the revenue. I'm sure they paid a lot of money to get this in there.
Newspapers are hurting for dollars, but what does that say about our free speech, and what does it say about the press, that you can just buy them off and spread propaganda?
But they
if they believe in this
all the time. They have political ads in the newspaper all the time.
Political ads, not hate propaganda, and the political ads, guess what? They're not by 501c3s. So they have to do their homework, and they acknowledge in their statement that it was a political ad, then why do you accept from a 501c3 organization a political ad? And again, that's where they,
Okay, Frank, what did you say?
I think the point that we brought up during the break, though, was that, it's one of these funny words that has lots of different meanings, and when we're discussing free speech, as I understand it, we're not discussing free speech as something that is either free in cost or that you have to pay for it. I think that free speech, in the legal discussion, is a matter of liberty, freedom, not a costing mechanism. So when we're protecting, if this is a free speech issue, we should probably keep what it cost out of that discussion.
The Nazis had plenty of money to distribute ads before the Holocaust about Jews.
Let me get Kathy in Port Richey. Says, I got this in the mail and just put it aside, but when I actually looked at it and saw it said, "Death to America," every citizen should watch it. I'm assuming that Kathy from Port Richey actually put it in and watched it. So, Tom, if they buy a political ad, would that be different than if they just gave it out for free and didn't pay for it?
No, there's no difference.
Okay.
First of all, a political ad, you'll see a little something that says paid political advertisement, or I'm so-and-so, I approve this message, and they make it clear it's a political ad. As you pointed out, this is a nonprofit organization putting out political speech, which basically is subsidized by us, the taxpayers. Okay, so when you talk about free speech, this is subsidized speech by the taxpayers.
But if it doesn't endorse a candidate, why is it political?
Well, no,
I'm not sure it's subsidized. We're all taxpayers, but are tax funds being used?
No, well,
They get a tax break.
They get a tax break.
And more than that, aside from getting a tax break, that they're able to distribute this out there and targeting voters, again, political speech. And there are limitations because of the soft money and all the things that they do, corruption as far as political campaigning. There are limitations how much money you can give to a political organization. For this, it could have been one guy that wrote the $60 million check to distribute all this. There are limitations on political organizations that they could receive a maximum of $5,000 and other limitations, so people don't use the media to control the political messaging. So again, as with a violation,